Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we are joined by the one, the only, Del Bigtree. And first of all, thank you very much for joining us today.
Absolutely, it's great to be here.
Well, one of the number one things I've been hearing lately, and you have of course as well, is Wuhan, coronavirus, plagues, contagions, and all this kind of stuff. And one thing I can't help but think about is it fear-mongering, or is it not being played up enough? Is it being used as a bioweapon? I wanted to hear your thoughts on the realities of this coronavirus outbreak versus, at the same time, these massive flu epidemics that are happening around the world at the same time. What do you think?
Well, I think, first of all, I'm a journalist. And so, one of the things I try to do is get multiple sources for any of the thoughts that I have. But, in a situation like this, I think that what I think is at issue is who's asking the questions and are they asking the right questions? And that's what I'm really, when we're watching mainstream media now, it's like any instance like this, I just feel like there's more intelligent questions to be asked. They're not being asked. I report all the time the fact that mainstream media is funded by pharma. I mean, you have to wrap your head around that. When you're watching those ads, in the commercial breaks, between, doesn't matter if it's CNN, Fox, MSNBC, whoever you're watching, it's all pharma ads. That means that news anchor is technically working for the pharmaceutical institution in many ways. So you have to know you're not getting the full picture. You're getting a biased perspective of the story. Now, coronavirus, when this whole thing first came out, I was kind of laughing to myself. Coronavirus is a cold. I mean, it's the common cold, right? And, yet we're freaking out, like there's all this energy around it, all these discussions. And so I was kind of on the fence, on the side where I usually am, which is they hype these things up. There's probably a vaccine that's ready to go, and they're just going to try and sell us a vaccine. But the more I looked into it, and what really sort of shifted for me was when I started seeing the CDC and World Health Organization saying, whoa, let's all just calm down a minute. Right now the CDC is saying, in America, this is really just 80% of people, it's like a common cold. When the CDC starts telling everybody to calm down, I get nervous. Because I watch them time and time again, like you said, hype up one case of measles and call it an outbreak. I mean, we see it all the time. Hype up, a flu or a flu shot. I mean, they're into sensationalizing so that we all will sign up for a vaccine program, take whatever drugs are out there. I mean, you got to see the CDC is really, in many ways, it's an advertising arm for the pharmaceutical institutions. They are so interlocked now that you can't really separate them. So when I see them like pumping the brakes, then I jump into a different perspective. What's really going on here? And then that's really what is going on for me right now. In fact, I just gave a talk yesterday here at Anarchapulco. I'm going to be on the main stage on Sunday, and I'm going to be breaking out some brand new ideas and things I think we should be looking at. But are we asking the right questions? And I think what's making me nervous is the idea, is this a lab-created virus? And on my show, The Highwire, I have a scientist named Dr. James Lyons-Weiler that came on 2 weeks ago, said definitely lab created, and now he's shifting and looked at more science, and now he's saying no, maybe it really is this pangolin animal they're all talking about.
Bat soup. But that's the thing, though. I mean, that's a common thing in places like China that have gone on for a long time. And, there's koala markets. There's a lot of crazy stuff that people eat there. But one thing I can't help but notice, and you kind of mentioned it, you alluded to it, Zika virus, H1N1, H2N9. You can go over so many SARS and all these different outbreaks over the years. Ebola, which had a 60 to 90% death rate compared to the 2.5% or so that coronavirus has. And meanwhile, there's this story about this couple that possibly took the disease a couple years ago out of a Winnipeg, Canada lab and brought it over to China after it was being tested from the Netherlands. And there's all these stories and they're conflicting, and it puts me in this kind of place where I go, there's fear-mongering, and then it also looks like there's a cover-up at the same time. It's really confusing me where this is going.
It's very confusing, and I think that we all have to keep our heads screwed on. I mean, in the end, all you can do right now is really have a strong immune system, which is, I think, there's a health and wellness, section here at Anarchapulco. You got to have a strong immune system for anything that's happening in the world. But I am concerned, and I think the thing that we really need to be looking at is whether or not this ends up being a lab-created virus. That makes me nervous because I want my kids to get the measles. I want my kids to have mumps and pertussis and whooping, all of these things, because the science I'm looking at says that once your child has had those diseases, they now have like the Ferrari of immunity. It's going to last them for their entire lives. No vaccine can provide that. Every vaccine is wearing off, and I believe that many of the outbreaks of measles, and you're looking at Samoa and all this fear-mongering around those things, what you're really seeing is the resulting failure of the vaccine program. I think over the next few years, what you're watching is a cover-up that the program to vaccinate everybody is failing. The vaccines are wearing off. Now we're seeing adults getting what used to be just trivial childhood illnesses. You don't want to get these illnesses as adults. Even the coronavirus right now, it's all adults. Kids seem to be perfectly healthy. So those are things that we have to start looking at. What's going on? Was there a vaccine used we didn't know about? I think that's one of the questions I want to have right now, because we know with the coronavirus that they have attempted to make vaccines, and in 4 different animal studies, crazy, they gave the animals the vaccine, and then when they came in contact with the coronavirus, they died. It actually killed them. And so those are some of the connections I'm looking at. Why are people dropping dead from what we're saying here is a common cold? Is there something that just makes Asians more susceptible? But in the end, whether or not this ends up being a lab-created virus, what it should be alerting all of us to is the possibility for that to happen. We have these labs all over the world now, level 2 labs that are making up, viruses and adding HIV proteins or adding SARS proteins, all to experiment with making a vaccine, how we protect ourselves from an epidemic. It is so easy for these things to slip out. It's happening all the time. It's being reported on all the time. And so we have to ask ourselves and think about it. If this ended up being, let's say it was just a vaccine program taking place in a level 2 lab or a level 4 lab, they're trying to see if we get a coronavirus with a SARS, and they were making a vaccine and it just escaped, or an animal escaped, or somebody walked out with it with them, and then all these people are dying. That will really hurt the vaccine program, because you could argue that vaccinations, though it wasn't purposeful, the creating of this vaccine or an attempt to create a vaccine actually got a lot of people killed. And this is the type of dialogue, these questions you have to imagine really alarm the CDC, really alarm the WHO. These government agencies, we call them government agencies, even though they've been completely, commandeered and taken over by the pharmaceutical industries. They are going to hide that information from you. Anything that would lead to a bioweapons lab, a vaccine lab actually is the reason this happened. They don't want you to know that. And you just have to assume that's going to be hidden. Now, add on top of that, it's China. China has a pride issue. They don't even tell their own people when there's something happening to them in a town. And anybody that speaks out, about something about the government, they immediately disappear.
Well, the original whistleblower about coronavirus ended up dead not long ago. We have to remember they're literally rounding people up. They have essentially covered up this disease. In the first place, it got out because they wouldn't tell anyone about it. Right. And on top of that, it's the Chinese government, as you mentioned. They have been following people around with drones, harassing people, rounding people up. And on top of that, the Hong Kong protests have magically cleared up after months and months of huge, massive protests, historic protests. You've got to wonder, where's the misdirection? Is there a misdirection? Are they misdirecting us from something else? And that's another thing I wanted to go into quickly with you was the flu epidemic that's happening right now in the United States, especially. There is a huge flu epidemic. We're seeing a lot more deaths than I think usual when it comes to the regular flu. No one's talking about it. It's much more deaths than the coronavirus, but nobody's talking about it. Do you think that there is some kind of epidemic happening there that we're being misdirected from, or is there any benefit to that? There's vaccines that they can shove down our throat as well. What do you think?
I think that's the problem. I think that's why you're not hearing about it. They do have a vaccine for flu and it's failing. And they don't want to celebrate the fact that all these people that are dying of the flu and catching the flu got the vaccine. You're hearing that, you're seeing that story even in blips in some mainstream mainstream papers here and there. Certainly online, social media, people like, my kid got the vaccine. Now they're deathly ill. So I don't think they're celebrating the flu pandemic, if you want to call it right now, because it doesn't look good for them. It points to the fact that they already told us at the beginning of this flu season, we screwed up. The version of flu that we decided to put in the vaccine is not what's coming across the country, and so that's exactly how this works. And remember, they always make us afraid of diseases they can vaccinate for. They really don't like to make us afraid of diseases that they can't vaccinate for, which is what's making me curious about coronavirus, except that now what you're seeing, what's really terrifying, is the idea that they want to ramp up productions of coronavirus vaccines. You should be very nervous about that. That means they're going to, they already don't test any of our childhood vaccines. This is what we've proved with my nonprofit. They don't test them against an inert placebo. They don't go through standard safety studies that every other drug goes through. Now take a product that's being rushed on the market anyway and then create a hypersensitivity around it. We really got to rush it because everyone's afraid. Man, mistakes are going to happen, and we can't afford those kind of mistakes. But I think the flu, look, it's always a pandemic, right? Flu always sweeps in tens of thousands of people get the flu in America, if not hundreds of thousands of people every year. So it's always a pandemic. They've never really figured out a vaccine that can, that predicts it. Last year's vaccine was about 10% effective. This one looks like it might be even worse. And so I think that, again, they hype things up when they want it. It was all hyper, be worried about the flu coming and all the vaccine's not going to work. And now you don't really hear much about it. We're all distracted by the coronavirus. In the end, though, the thing I'm trying to get through to people, and I did a sort of an example on my show about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. Just think about the logic of our vaccine program. Okay, look at coronavirus. I dumped a big bag of rice onto a table, like just millions of pieces of rice on the table, and I said, this is how many bacteria and viruses there are, and probably in your own gut. There's more than this even on the planet. Billions, trillions of bacteria and viruses. Your body is made of millions and millions, even billions of viruses and bacteria. And the medical institutions want you to believe they're going, oh my God, coronavirus, and they pick up one of these pieces of rice and they say, we're going to start working on a vaccine for this, and they're going to get us all hyped on it. And they go, look, we got it, everybody's got to get it, and then they throw it onto that pile and you can't even see it. What difference does that make? They make us feel safe because we vaccinated for one bacteria or one virus that is in a billions of these things, right? And so think about it. We have 16 vaccines that they say you're crazy if you don't use this system. You're putting every kid at risk. Every immune-suppressed child is at risk because your child didn't vaccinate against the 16 of billions of viruses and bacteria. And the idea that your medical establishment is saying to you, their dream is to one day have a vaccine for every virus and bacteria that's out there, one by one. How many shots are we going to have to get? When you really start looking at it, it's absolutely moronic. And they're only talking about coronavirus right now because they want a vaccine. But you know how many things kill people that they breathe every day? Bacteria. We now have antibiotics. We have antibiotic-resistant bacteria being caused by the creation of antibiotics and the overuse of them. All of these things.
Antibiotics with clavinulate or something that's on top of that to freeze the resistant bacteria, and even that's starting to not work, and they're just adding on top of it. One final question, though, Del, something I'm interested in your thoughts on with everything that's happening with flu epidemics around the world. I couldn't help but think of the Super Bowl commercials. This last Super Bowl, I don't watch the Super Bowl, but I couldn't help but notice that they were banning CBD ads during the Super Bowl, but they were pumping out alcohol and pharmaceuticals in people's faces. That's okay, but you show a small child getting cured by CBD oil, and you can't do that. Are they purposely going out of their way to make people dumber, stupider, more dependent, and weaker in order to sell their products? Kind of like the repeat after me. Like, you don't have to actually believe it, just it's in your face all the time, so you're just going to repeat the mantra over and over again. Are they going out of their way? Is there a concerted effort, do you think, to make people dumber and weaker and more unhealthy?
I don't know if they're trying to make you dumber. I think they want to be selling their products. Right. And you don't have to be stupid to sell products. You just simply have to hear a repetitive message all the time that the only reason I'm alive is because of pharmaceuticals. How many people will say that? We're alive because of vaccines. You have to then forget the entire, how many millennia before you of humankind that
It's not like we stopped throwing sewage in the streets.
Right. I mean, like, that didn't have anything to do with it. Having toilets and clean running water couldn't possibly led to all of it. But what you have to remember is what I said in the beginning. That television on your wall is a billboard for the pharmaceutical industry. No two ways about it. If you talk to, Bobby Kennedy always says he was friends with the head of NBC. He says, look, I agree with you on drugs and vaccines, but if any one of my reporters ever talks about that, I'm going to fire them, because that's who's funding all of the television we make. Every series, everything that you're watching on that TV is simply attracting you to a billboard that's going to sell you drugs. So of course they don't want a CBD commercial, because GlaxoSmithKline, Pfizer, Sanofi, Aventis don't have CBD products yet. They aren't controlling that market yet. Now, you can assure, yourself, once the Fed decides, and why aren't they deciding to just legalize it everywhere? Because they're waiting for pharma to get in control of the market, I think. And right now, pharma is the #1 most powerful lobby in Washington. It's outspending oil and gas 2-to-1. We fight wars in the Middle East for oil and gas. What is pharma getting? They're getting your body, they're getting your television, they're getting everything around you, and you don't realize that you are being brainwashed into this idea. You think you're a free-thinking person, but yet if you're worried about coronavirus, if you think you need a vaccine, they've already gotten to you. They've already gotten to you, because I just showed you 16 vaccines and billions of virus and bacteria aren't going to do anything for you. It's absolutely useless. It's a drop of water in the ocean that they're telling you matters. If you believe it, then you should check in with yourself. That's a red flag. They got to you. They have brainwashed you, and you really need to think about how many times you want to turn that billboard on in your living room, in your bedroom, in your bathroom, on your phone, wherever you're watching it.
It gets people to stand there going, please help us, someone save me from myself. At the end of the day, people are the greatest cures for their own ailments and for their own health. Finishing it off, can you tell everyone where they can find more of your work, support the work you do, find The Highwire? Talk about that.
So every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, I just had my 150th episode yesterday of The Highwire, so we've been at it for nearly 3 years now. Interviewing scientists, doctors, bringing in specialists from all around the world. So you can go watch it on Facebook. It's The Highwire with Del Bigtree. Also on YouTube, The Highwire with Del Bigtree. Or you can go to my website, thehighwire.com. And then, of course, you can find it on iTunes if you want to listen to it in your car. Also, I have a nonprofit that really funds. Highwire is just the educational program we put out. My nonprofit, you can find the website icandecide.org. That has white papers that we've written all about vaccines. It also, you can read we've won 3 lawsuits against government health agencies. I've won a lawsuit against Health and Human Services, one against the National Institute of Health. We just settled a case with the FDA. FDA is a very interesting case. If you're pregnant, you'll see that there's these posters all over, drugstores and in hospitals saying you need to get your Tdap vaccine. You want a healthy baby, get your Tdap vaccine, get your flu shot as a pregnant mother. Well, I was at a CDC meeting where they decide to put vaccines on the schedule, and I listened to one of the head scientists at the CDC interrupt everybody and say, by the way, we have to remember that since vaccines haven't been tested in pregnant women, it's an off-label usage. And from that I said, what's he talking about? So we use Freedom of Information Act requests and asked for the Health and Human Services to show us, and the CDC to show us, what studies are you relying on when you're telling a pregnant woman to get a flu shot or a Tdap? We want to see all the studies you have that had pregnant women in the study. And they finally made us sue them to get the answer, even though they're supposed to give it to us. And they admitted, we have never had a vaccine safety trial on flu shot or Tdap that was given to a pregnant woman. So those types of things people need to know. They are just making this stuff up. They have no idea. And the package insert says, we have no idea what this will do to a developing fetus. And what have we seen? On NBC News last year, it was reported, a study out of the CDC found 7-fold increase of miscarriage with women that got a flu shot in the first trimester of life. Yet your doctor's not telling you that. They're telling you to get a flu shot. You got to start questioning everything. And by the way, doctors, I think, are now one of the biggest problems you have. We now have proof. We have the World Health Organization, one of the head scientists in a show I did earlier this year, behind closed doors, admitted our doctors and our nurses, really, when we think about it, their education on vaccines is only a half day long at best. Your doctor, your pediatrician knows nothing about vaccines. They only know, put it here, maybe some swelling. If the parent asks any questions, tell them it's the safest thing ever made. And if they continue to then, question you, push them out of your practice. These frontline doctors are absolutely total ignoramuses when it comes to how a vaccine works, how your immune system works, and yet you're handing your baby over to them for a product that's never been tested for safety.
Well, I truly appreciate you joining us. I know that doctors have really negatively affected my health over time with misdiagnoses, not knowing what they're talking about, throwing different medications at me, and I'm still paying for it to this day. So, I really appreciate what you're doing. And, by the way, guys, make sure to check the links below and help us out and check out Del Bigtree, because he is the kind of person that the shadow banners, the algorithm, the people on YouTube don't want to hear. And there's a reason for that. There's always a reason people get censored. This video will 100% be demonetized, 100%, guys. So make sure to check those links below.
You weren't expecting to make any money on this, right?
Certainly not.
Here's what I want people to really think about. The biggest problem, and what I'm trying to wake people up to, is you may think this is about kids. Maybe you're done vaccinating. There's an adult forced vaccine mandate coming to America, coming to Europe, coming to the entire world. That's what you need to be aware of. That's what we need to stand up. That's what we have to stop. The money, the reason they're pouring so much money in the government is not to get those 2% of the anti-vaxxers to vaccinate their kids. There's no money in that. The money is in 340 million Americans, billions in China. If they can force vaccinate adults with, by the way, 270 approved vaccines right now you've never thought about, what if you have to get those vaccines and you have no choice? You can't get on a plane. You can't get your passport. You can't get a job. You can't join your union. That is right around the corner. That is about a year away, especially, I hate to say this, not to be political, but the Democratic Party right now is absolutely, look at what they're saying. Buttigieg saying, I believe in taking away all exemptions out of vaccines except for medical exemptions. What he's saying is a forced vaccination program for adults. I will fully support that. I will make it so the real ID that's coming on your driver's license, you're being told at TSA, your driver's license won't work for you next year, October 2020. You have to have a real ID. That real ID has your medical records on it. That's what it's for. You will not be able to drive. You will not be able to get your driver's license. They've already done it in Argentina. In Argentina now, every adult had to get vaccinated if they wanted to get a passport, wanted to get a driver's license, or wanted to join any union or job. This is right around the corner. If you lose control of your own body, then what country? Do you think you live in a free country anymore? That is absolutely insane. And think about how many people are terrified of Donald Trump right now. When I think of Democrats, my friends are like, I'm pro-vaccine, I'm pro-Democrats. I think you're terrified of Donald Trump and you're handing him the power to inject your body with things you have no control over. That's what's really going on here.
Yeah, it sounds to me like Chinese-style technocracy, and it's really starting to grow and it's fast. But anyway, I really appreciate you joining us. Thanks for joining us, Dale.
Good.
Like what you see here, Wham! Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We cannot do it without you guys. Every donation is extremely, extremely appreciated as we're getting incredibly shadow banned. We've lost 80% of our audience since January of 2019 and counting. They are ripping us apart here on YouTube, and the only thing we could do in the meantime as we prepare for the next big step is to ask for help from the viewers that support our free information that we try to post on a daily basis. You can also find us on Subscribestar, where just $1 a month, that's all it takes, $1 a month is all it takes to truly make a huge difference. If everyone gave $1 a month, it would change everything for independent media, and we could win this information war, and we can defeat the mainstream medias eventually. And of course, on Subscribestar, we post subscriber-only content that you'll only see on Subscribestar. So make sure to pledge there, become a patron. That makes a huge difference, guys. And also, don't forget to check out our Bitcoin address below in the comments and description, as well as on the screen for you to scan, if you please. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on the alternatives. We will likely be deleted by YouTube in the next 2 years. It's already happening on a vast scale, so make sure to find us on float.app. That's flote.app. at Josh Sigurdson, as well as at Wham, W-A-M. Float.app is replacing every social media, and I mean, it's just incredible the opportunities it provides for not just creators, but for the average person who wants to get away from these nannies telling them what they can or cannot see. They plan to replace Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, Tumblr, Reddit, and Patreon. You could subscribe to us on Float and pledge with cryptocurrency. It's really innovative. We are also on BitChute at World Alternative Media, as well as so many others, Minds, PocketNet. You can find us at World Alternative Media on Instagram. There's many options. And finally, don't forget to join us at Anarchapulco 2020, the famous event, the best Liberty event known to mankind other than perhaps Anarcho Vegas 2020. There are 2 major events coming up that we are extremely excited about, and you can use promo code WHAM, that's W-A-M, and save 10% on your tickets to these legendary conferences. There's so many amazing people speaking there. You won't want to miss it. So make sure to support in any way you can, even if it's just sharing our videos, pressing like, pressing to be notified. Anything helps, folks. You are the change you wish to see. Thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.